And welcome to this video. Round 9 of the London tournament here for the candidates to get to know the next challenger for world champion Vishy Anand later this year. It's been a very exciting tournament, and today was a quite an eventful round, and maybe the most entertaining and interesting round up to now. It's been very enjoyable today, being here in London to watch it live with all the nice commentary provided by the Grandmasters on site. It was very nice today to visit. I was also joined by my friend and also channel colleague Tryphon, also known as King's Crusher. You probably know his channel as well. It was very nice to be with him at the event and follow the games, and they were all interesting now in a way, with different sort of focus for all games. Some were more tactical, some were interesting from a more strategical point of view. Okay, let's go through the games, and I'll start with Kramnik against Carlsen, which obviously before the round seemed like the most attractive game, and it was interesting. It wasn't an uneventful draw. So Kramnik is 1 point behind, so with a win he would actually catch Carlsen and be right in the middle of it. So what do we get? Catalan. Yeah, Black has a number of enterprising options here. Mostly you can go c5 to make the game a bit more unbalanced, but Carlsen certainly is more in for a solid game, so he plays d5 and the bishop e7. We get the same thing that he had yesterday with white, actually, against Aronian, and it was a rather uneventful draw. Kramnik, however, has prepared a surprise here. He went knight e5, which is an interesting move. It's in a way more ambitious than queen c2, because you want to recapture on c4 with a knight and simply build up a good position with the great bishop on g2. A possible line, for example, is here. Let's say Black plays c5, just normal moves. You can easily get a position like this on the board, where this bishop is simply so much better than the c8 bishop that white already has got a really clear advantage. If you actually look at this with the computer, it won't give a big advantage for white, because the computer doesn't understand the long-term problems of this bishop. The knight e5 move here really requires some very direct counterplay, and Carlsen played here knight to c6, which is for a long time considered to be the best reply. At first it looks a bit strange, but it makes sure that white has got two active pieces, and both are now attacked in a way. This knight must take on c6, either immediately or after the exchange. Yeah, he went bishop c6, but white also could play this, and for example, after white captures rook b8, Black's got a very active position, well, not on d3, but the queen is putting some pressure on d4. Let's say knight c3, bishop b7, this kind of positions where Black is coming with c5. He doesn't have any big issues here. It should be about equal. Yeah, maybe Black is even more comfortable. It's not a problem. White's idea, however, is something different. He wants to take with the bishop, and this is what Kramnik played. Takes, knight takes, queen e8, knight e7, with check, queen takes. And this is a very well-known theoretical position which has been played really a big number of times. What is the idea? Very often we get a position where white actually enjoys an extra pawn, like this, let's say queen a4, e5 takes, queen c4, and white has got an extra pawn, but black's got big activity. He's got those ideas, bishop to h3. This is the problem. White's king and king side is very weak, and black has got exactly the right bishop to take care of those those weak squares. So black is very, very okay here, but it's not easy to play this position because you're pawn down. You always need to somehow prove your compensation, and this is in a way what Kramnik wanted to have. He didn't play exactly this. He played something else interesting, queen c2, which is very uncommon in this position, but it has got its points. Black now played e5, and now rook to d1, and this is really an unknown way to play. White is not really taking this pawn. He just wants to catch up in development and at the end have the better structure, and this is actually working out nicely in this game. This is a rook b8, activating the rook, knight c3, h6. Looks like a bit of a time loss, but bishop to g5 was an annoying move, threatening knight d5, for example. Yeah, h6. After that, Kramnik took and developed with the tempo. Rook d4. So now have a look at this position. Isn't white just distinctly better? Yeah, probably he is. It looks like black must play with extreme care to not run into some very unpleasant, especially very unpleasant endgame. If you look at this position with, let's say, queens exchanged, then white will have a big edge. He can relatively in an easy way defend the queen side, and will always have pressure against those weak pawns. I'm not so sure what black should have done differently, because it looks like white is really substantially better here. The computer wants to play some moves like g5, for example, and I don't really believe it. Yeah, Carlsen played just normal moves. Bishop e6, covering c4, rook d1, and now he doubled on the b file, which makes sense. Some pressure on b2, queen d2. Yeah, this is an interesting move, intending rook to d8. And this is why Carlsen played king to h7. There was also sometimes the idea to take on h6, so king h7 is a prophylactic move. And now he played f3, just controlling important squares, and maybe intending to play e4 later, controlling even more important squares. So very nice positional game by Kramnik. He's got a good position. Rook d8, and this is interesting, very interesting. Here I've at least expected something entirely different. He played now queen e3, which is a really interesting way to go about it. He also could have played queen c2, which was what I expected. Queen, king back, and then maybe a move like bishop c1 to have b2 protected. Then maybe try e4 and somehow make progress. It's not so bad to drop the bishop back, because there's essentially one bishop against two rooks, so black needs to use two rooks to tie one bishop up, and this is fine for white, I think. Also, Kramnik played a much more direct way, and very good way actually. Queen e3, rook takes, and rook c4. This was the idea, using this pin, and there are still two very weak pawns. Yeah, Magnus dropped this rook back, covering c7, and now white played rook a4. And the only thing that I know is it looks really like a great position for white. He's got those weaknesses to attack, and a7 is especially bad at the moment. In fact, Carlsen simply ignored this pawn and sacrificed it. If black would go rook a8, playing some passive-looking move, there's even ideas of sometimes sacrificing on h6. Just the sample line. If you take here, black is in big trouble. Let's say h5, you go queen g5, and there's rook h5 threatened, and this is actually over. No way to save black. So this was the threat. You cannot go rook a8 because of this bishop h6. And he played a really cool move. He played rook e8, which nobody really understood at the time when it was played. But he had seen a really great tactical resource. And let's have a look at this. Rook a7. Rook takes, queen takes. So Kramnik grabbed the pawn. And queen b4. This was one of Carlsen's ideas. Attacking the queen. Not attacking the queen, activating the queen. It attacks c3. So what is white supposed to do? Kramnik calculated mostly, as he said in the press conference, queen d4 and the move that he played. After this there's c5. This kind of continuation, but it's he actually said in the press conference that he believe that black has got decent drawing chances in this position. It still doesn't seem like very comfortable, but black has gotten some activity. He's not passively defending weaknesses now. He played bishop to e5, and here Carlsen came up with a great move, and it's not so difficult to see the move. I mean, I actually saw it in the commentary room and suggested it. But the great thing is not this move. The great thing is that he calculated all this 3 moves before when he went rook e8, because this is only working, the move that is coming now, knight d5, it's only working because of the rook. It's got this X-ray power on the e-file. And after knight d5, I think it's maybe over with any winning attempts for white. The big point is if white would go here and grab the piece, there's queen e1 check and queen e2. And e5 is just hanging, so you would get it back, like queen f2, rook e5, and it's a draw. White can also not play for a win. King h3, king f1, and something like this actually leads to checkmate. Can continue this if you like. Say here. And it's a mate. Just one line. There are a couple of other mates. So this is not working. So white needs to do something else in this position. And he played queen c7, which Carlsen answered with queen c4. He had all this calculated beforehand, attacking a2 and e2. Yeah. Kramnik played a3. If he would have taken here, then it's a simple double attack. And the problem is also, let's say this e2 pawn is falling, then there's immediately f3 weak, and I mean it's opposite colored bishops, so around here it's probably just a draw. Kramnik played a3 and now Magnus played f6. In fact, here there's a funny move, bishop c6, which was suggested in the commentary room by Dr. John Nunn, one of the first English grandmasters, or British grandmasters. He was a really strong player, like, I don't know, top 20, top 30 in the 1980s and early 90s. He's now retired from professional chess. I mean, playing professional chess. He's involved with chess and as an editor and book author in all kinds of fields. He's tied to chess, but he's not playing in tournaments anymore. He came up with this move, and it's really interesting. It's actually a way for black to try to win, which seems weird. He's 2 pawns down, but black actually has ideas. There's some pressure on this bishop. There's pressure on e2. It all seems to go like this: king to f1, queen b5, attacking e5. And then there are crazy lines like f4, f6, and rook d6, counter-attacking on c6. It all ends up with a draw anyway. But Carlsen wasn't in for any adventures. A draw was fine, so he played f6. Queens were exchanged, and now black got the pawn back on e2. He's got activity, he's got the rook on the second rank, and those pawns are both weak. They continued a couple of more moves, but it's around here it's really just a draw. Oops. Yeah, and here it was agreed drawn. King f1, rook here, and then there's rook d7 with this counterplay, and everything will get exchanged now, like here. Oops, bishop f8, king g8 takes, and okay, it's dead. There's simply nothing going on. So a draw, very important for Carlsen to not have lost the game and let Kramnik catch up with him. So good result for Magnus. Let's have a look at the other games. Need to check here. Need to pull up the game, just a second. Yeah, here we go. The next game I'm going to look at is Gelfand against Aronian. So Aronian is still the co-leader with 3 wins and no loss. And Gelfand is playing white. He won yesterday against Rajabov, so certainly he was in a good mood to put up a good fight. So we got this classical Queen's Gambit here with knight bd7 against bishop f4, a line that I played myself numerous times with black, with white actually also, but with black mostly. Yeah, bishop e2 was Gelfand's move here, a move that has gotten much more popular recently. To be honest, I never understood it. I must be honest here. I never really got the point of this move. If black wants to just have a solid position, then he can easily just take on c4, which has been played a number of times. Quite often castles, and then you get something like this: a6, a4, c5, takes, knight b6, something like that, and mostly it's an isolated pawn position where this bishop is not in a good spot. I don't know, this is one of the types of lines that you can get. It's really very solid for black. And when Aronian played c6, it was clear to me that he was trying to win this game. At least trying to get some sort of imbalance. Okay, castles and knight h5. This is one idea to imbalance the game, trying to get the bishop pair. It worked out because this bishop simply has no square. He played bishop e5, which is a good idea. Black cannot really take here because after d takes e5, this knight is really stranded on h5. The immediate threat is g4, and black needs to play some uncomfortable moves like g6 to not get in much more trouble. So it went differently. Played f6, this was the idea. Bishop dropped back. And here he played f5. In fact, I thought it would be interesting here to immediately take and then play f5. Could be a good option. Bishop to d6. and maybe even playing g5, g4. This is very crude, but it can be really effective. I don't know, it seems like a good alternative. He played e5, f5 immediately, and now white has got at least a chance, and he took it to play bishop e5. Yeah, Aronian now, he still doesn't want to take on e5 because of the d-pawn recapture, which leaves the knight stranded, so he played knight f6 first. Gelfand played h3. This is really a threat, h3. Or it has a threat. This means bishop h2 with a threat, securing the bishop on a great diagonal. So black took it. And we have this additional exchange here. And now it's it's a typical stonewall structure, but one that is really quite comfortable for black. The stonewall is not a bad opening. It's just very demanding from black's point of view because of those weaknesses that it entails with e5. But here he managed to put up this structure with a pawn on e5, which is in comparison much more comfortable, because a piece on e5 is simply menacing, but a pawn is not so dangerous. Black's got a fine position now. Bishop g5, queen here to protect e3, and there are a couple of very normal looking moves that actually just improve the position for both sides. Bishop d3, rook to c7. This is flexible. It can switch over to the king side. It can be used in the center also. Knight e2, bishop h5. Yeah, maybe black intends to exchange the still not good bishop on h5. Knight f4, and here we get a forcing continuation. Of course, black doesn't want to drop it back to f7, this bishop covering the pawn. He just took it, and Gelfand recaptured with the pawn. It seems okay. He didn't want to go here. I guess maybe because black will get g5 in at some point, maybe even immediately. E takes f4 is the more solid choice that stabilizes against the g5 idea. The weakness of this move is that d4 is weak now. Look at this pressure on the pawn here. In fact, Gelfand also could have played c5. This would be answered with g5, and it's not clear. It's not clear. It's like this as the consequence, with good play for black. Probably he didn't want that. Played queen e3. This is okay as well. Black now captured, recaptured, and now we've got a critical position of the game. Maybe the critical position of the game. White, of course, just threatens here, but black has got the play against d4. What should black play now? In fact, Aronian here, with enough time on the clock, just miscalculated terribly. He took on d4 and allowed this capture on e6. Bishop e6, Gelfand took it off. What is black supposed to do now? It's not comfortable. He's got the e-pawn. He simply miscalculated. He played bishop f7, and he obviously believed that white now must take. Rook takes, and then after possible later rook to d7, for example. It's not clear, this position. White has got a protected pass pawn, but black's got the d-file, so it's sort of imbalanced. However, after bishop f7, there was a simple move, captures on f5, because the intended move which he played, bishop c4, fails to e6, and this now is very critical. There's simply this e7 threat, and black's got nothing to show for this. He can only prevent the e-pawn from queening immediately. He did so with queen d6, rook e1, protecting, rook e8, blocking the pawn. But white simply now has this extremely strong pawn on e7, And how is black going to defend against this? I think there's nothing. In fact, if you look at the rest of the game, there were some position. This is actually nice. Attending queen h6. Black cannot take the bishop. And this is quite strong. Yeah, it's really a terrible position for black. In fact, Gelfand won another pawn. Here queen g5 was stronger. Still trying to attack the king. Maybe rook g3, then there's queen h4. And I mean, look at this. White is 2 pawns up at the moment. He's got an attack, and yeah, it's just resignable actually. Gelfand actually played queen e5. He didn't have much time on the clock. You see that both sides, they only had below 1 minute. I'm not sure that Gelfand's clock here is correct. He wasn't that low on time, not quite sure. But okay, he got rid of the queens. And after this, Aronian at least got a pawn here. But still, it's a great pawn on e7, and there are 2 passed pawns on the king side, while black's pawns, he's got 3 against 1. But 3 against 1 in this kind of situation means you don't have a pass pawn, and he simply never got the time to actually produce a pass pawn and get some counterplay. Gelfand mopped this up now. Protected this, and now you threaten like this, and at the end there's some checkmate with the rooks and the pawn. And it went on for a couple of moves, but there was basically not much happening. Just a good technical display. Gelfand now gave up on this e7 pawn, but at the end he has 2 passed pawns that are just far more advanced than black's pawns here. And a couple of moves later, here after king move, let's say here, there's rook h5, and then the h-pawn will promote. Yeah, very nice win for Gelfand, who took the chance when Aronian played this inaccurate setup, this tactical sequence here with bishop c4 that was not working because of the e-pawn. Gelfand nicely took advantage of this, and now he's at 50%. He won 2 games in a row. And yeah, maybe he's on a roll. And the next game is against Carlsen with black. If Gelfand wins this game, I'm not... he's on +1, Carlsen on +2. You never know. Maybe this... or in his old age, he is getting on roll and winning the rest of his games. It would be quite funny. All right, so good win for Gelfand, and very bad result for Aronian, who spoiled much of his chances now to win the tournament. It's just okay. It's not like impossible now, but he needs to win some game again. Carlsen really looks like he's never going to lose, no matter how bad the position is, and this means Aronian must get in some win. Yeah, an interesting game nevertheless. Okay, now have a look at Ivanchuk against Radjabov. This game was in fact awfully long, and I'm going to do it rather quickly because the last game requires a little bit more attention. So we've got Queen's Gambit declined, and instead of bishop f4, Ivanchuk plays bishop g5, the classical move, and Radjabov plays h6, bishop h4, and here he's surprised with knight e4. I mean, this is the Lasker variation, but Lasker variation usually goes like this, where you've got castled. He played it simply 1 move earlier, and this seemed like a little bit of an imprecise way, because after queen b3, the attack on d5, usually you get this position with castles played and e3 played. And in this position, black can go rook f8 to d8. So it's like, just put it on the board. It makes no sense because it is hanging. But in the comparable position, there's rook d8 to cover the pawn. In the game, you have no rook d8, so you needed to play c6 to cover the pawn. And this is a bit more passive. With rook d8, you actually still have the idea to play c7, c5 or some other move. And this is really a passive line now. Let's just put on a couple of moves. We get this pawn structure, and in fact, this pawn structure now will stay on the board for like 20-25 moves. It's a very one-sided kind of structure where black's only chance is at counterplay, at real play, is to attack white's king with pieces like knight here, rook d8, d6, g6. It's simply difficult to do, but this would be black's idea, and he's not really in a position to do that. And white just wants to increase the pressure on the queen side, and it happens in the game. Got this exchange, and still white is piling up pressure on those pawns. Black has got a nicely placed knight covering the structure, but black of course is out of any counterplay. Very important moment. Queens are exchanged, and this is necessary. White cannot really make any progress with queens on. The problem is, let's exchange this, that the next kind of step is, after you got this advantage on the queen side, but advantage is nice, but how do you actually win a pawn here? It's very difficult. The only way is to really combine threats and gain space in the center and on the king side, and you cannot do that with queens on. You need to exchange the queens, as Ivanchuk did, to actually get something in the center and on the king side. Let's see the following moves. Yeah, knights were exchanged, and now the next step is simply to expand in the center. Look, this is very nice. Now white has got a very healthy pawn structure, and only one pawn is really a weakness. It's the d4 pawn, slightly weak, but it's not that important because black only can attack it twice and you can easily defend it. Yeah, the only question is, how does white actually make progress? And Ivanchuk, in fact, does a nice job in making progress. He is playing for the e5 break. And here we go. He's trying to break up black's pawn formation. And at the end, he's intending to play with pass pawns. Again, those backward pawns that are far away from even advancing. And here, with this sequence, white gets into a rook endgame, which is probably just winning. There's no real defense for black. He continued for a little while, but it's too much. 3 pass pawns is too much, and those pawns are just rolling. Right here, black has no move after rook takes. There's simply rook d8 check, queen c7, and f7, and white gets a new queen. So very nice technical display by Ivanchuk. I didn't get into this game so deeply because it really was very one-sided, where white somehow always had some advantage, and he nicely did this in the end game at the end to win the game. But it's difficult to do a detailed analysis here of each move. It's certainly likely that you will find some defensive resources for black, but it's very, very uncomfortable to play this position. And I think even with good defense and tenacious defender on the black side, it's not nice to play in Jubelov and lose. Okay, so the final game to look at is Svidler against Grischuk, and this is a wild one. Okay, we got a King's Indian Zemish. That was to expect. Svidler played this before already in the tournament against Rajabov and won a nice game. There, however, they played this, not this line, played this move, attacking c4, and Grischuk now plays the older move, knight e5, and the somewhat more, I don't know, logical maybe, centralizing instead of putting it on the rim. Okay, c4 is saying so, knight g3, and now Svidler went h5, immediately attacking this knight and trying to disturb white's development. The problem is this knight, when it is attacked, where it is supposed to go, cannot go back to e2 and let c4 hang. So bishop e2, h4, knight f1 is a rather logical way to continue as white. You don't really have a big alternative, and this is somewhat hampered now your development. Black has more than one move now, but it's only one move that is really in the real spirit of the position, and this is what he played. He played e6. Why in the spirit of the position? Because it's the most active and principled move. The thing is, if you would suggest this move and then I ask you, okay, what about f4? What is this knight actually doing? You're hard pressed for an answer probably, because knight d7 you can just take and then d6 falls, with a terrible position for black. So what does this mean? Does Grischuk just blundered? Where is he going? In fact, there are some games with this move, which has been played a couple of times. Looks like a blunder, but after all this, the queen is hanging and there's d4 coming, so black will get the piece back. This seems to be a bit better for white. f5 is the main move. So Grischuk probably needed some kind of improvement, and the amazing thing is what he played here. He took on c4, which looks really ridiculous. I mean, to be honest, it looks weird that this is working as only showing that we're playing an amazing game. It's funny. White can just take it, and Svidler, okay, he took it. What else is there? You need to get this piece, and now he played b5, Grischuk. Yeah, what is white supposed to do now? It's actually very tricky. If white now would go takes on b5, for example, with the knight, and black simply takes on d5, and this can get ugly very quickly. If white takes on d5 with the pawn, for example, there's rook e8, simply rook e8, and you really have big problems to untie yourself on the e file. This is actually a very bad line for white. You could also think about this, but black here also has a simple solution. You just take here and something like this. What is the knight supposed to do? If it returns, it's just this move, and white completely explodes. I mean, look at all those pieces. They are so uncoordinated, and you have got the king on e1, which is terrible on the open e file. To cut it short, knight takes b5 is not really a good move. He took with the bishop. This is good. Black took on d5, and now Swidler played e5. He really defended excellently after this big surprise, this piece sacrifice. E takes d5 in comparison is just answered by rook b8. It's funny that such a quiet move is the key, but the thing is, how does white untangle? It's very difficult. There's this a6 idea with taking on b2, and white is so tied down. Let's say queen d2, just to suggest a move. Queen e7. And what is white doing now? One idea, for example, would be this move, to sort of sort your position and trying to harmonize it, to retreat it from this exposed square. Here black can play, for instance, h3, and now have a look at this line. It's not forced, but it shows how quickly it all can go downhill. g3, and now c4 is strong. Bishop takes, knight e4, and white can resign. As knight takes e4, queen takes e4, there's this hanging, and rook b2 coming. A disaster. Black will win big material now and the game. So it's a real minefield, this position. He went e5, attacking this knight, and it continued. Takes, and bishop g4. So black attacks the queen, and yeah, it's super difficult. Swidler took a practical decision and sacrificed the queen. Now he took on f6. You can try to keep the queen on, but it always leads to very uncomfortable counterplay, simply based on the bad king position, black central pawns, and better mobility. I think this is a very human move, sacrifice the queen, because you can see that you get lots of pieces for it, and you have chances to coordinate your position nicely. So he took the queen, no choice. Takes on g7, black recaptured, and now bishop takes c5. This is also important. This is much better than taking on d1, after which d4 is actually good for black. Black's got a queen against 4 pieces, but he will win 1 piece back, and he's much better coordinated. Bishop c5 is stronger because the bishop can play a really good role on d4, blocking the pawn and keeping your pieces active. It helps to coordinate white. If black would play, let's say, bishop h5 now, white could give this check and play along these lines, knight e3, and now white actually is able to castle shortly with a good position. This means black needs to do something else in this position. He cannot allow this, so he played the strong move h3. This is really strong. The idea is to free the f3 square. If white takes now, there's bishop f3, and black is actually winning. It's got queen here, for example, and this is very annoying. So after h3, black is threatening this, and white cannot really take. So what happens? Yeah, well, he took on d1 and returned the material in this way. So what is this now? 3 pieces against the queen. Actually, we thought in the analysis room that white would have a substantial advantage, but it didn't really materialize, simply because black still has got activity going. Rook d4, yeah, maybe here bishop d4 was better, but this rook move was interesting. The idea was to get this set up with the idea of bishop d4, and in fact with great play. But the fun thing is that black here has a strong move, and Grischuk found it. Played d4. This is much stronger than any other move. He just attacks the bishop, and white is forced to take it with check, and now exchange sacrifice. This is strong. And rook b8. Yeah, why sacrifice the exchange? Yeah, simply because the bishop on d4 was such a strong piece, it was better than a rook. and it's also a very concrete way to play. Now rook b8 attacks b5, and there's also pressure on b2. It's not so easy now for white to react. He played a4 to protect it on b5, and now a6. This was really good play by both sides. I mean, this is so insanely complicated, this stuff that Grischuk prepared here, that it's great that Svidler actually survived all this and got to a position where he is actually the player who's maybe having some winning chances. However, in this position he made a mistake. He took a6 very quickly even, and this could have led to big trouble for white if Grischuk would have seen the move queen e5. This attacks the rook and gets in this threat, queen f6 check, and this is actually rather annoying. You cannot stop this from getting lost. White is probably playing some rook move, let's say here, I don't know, something like this, and while white has always chances to survive such a position, there are sometimes those fortress types of setups. It's clear that black is the one trying to win here, and I think in fact after the way the game progressed with little time, it's very difficult for white to manage. But Grischuk didn't see that. He had planned beforehand, a couple of moves before, to give this check, which is not stupid at all, and this is what he prepared. Otherwise it wouldn't make much sense. So this is actually losing, meaning that white only has this move, and now black can give this check, king e2 and rook b2. This was what Grischuk had intended, and it's understandable that he maybe with little time didn't double and triple check anything and just went for the continuation that he had planned all along. And now black's got quite some counterplay going with queen and rook, putting pressure on the king. And I think Svidler kept it all nicely together until we reached this position where black managed to here to set his f-pawn in motion. In fact, the whole thing seems to be rather drawish. Not drawish in a way like it's I don't know, a boring position. It's a very tactical and complicated position, but the f-pawn simply seems to be so strong that white needs to return some material, and at the end he cannot win. In fact, after king c2 and f3, Grischuk did a very clever thing. He offered a draw, and Svidler actually accepted it. It's probably not wrong really to take the draw, but this was pointed out in the analysis room. White can try to play on here with various moves. The simple one is rook here, and this leads to a typical endgame: queen g2 check, king somewhere. No, I don't know. Or you can, it's actually this one. Sorry, I screwed this up here. And now white cannot stop this from happening. So rook f4. And this position, it's this position where you can look at a5 for white. And you can easily make out that white is never going to lose this position. You can simply stay with your rook, or here if you want. It's just nothing happening. Black has not even a check. But you can argue that while white is not going to lose, he's got the a-pawn, and this is a factor. Probably it is still a draw with some kind of perpetual by the queen, but Svidler could have continued to this position and tried, because, well, you cannot lose, you might as well try. But I think he was maybe too surprised by the the F-pawn, that it got so dangerous that he preferred to wrap the game up and not continue. So very chaotic game. I could easily, I think, make a much longer video on this game, but I have my limits here. So I hope you enjoyed this. I think it was a very enjoyable round. There's a rest day tomorrow on the 26th of March, but of course it will continue on Wednesday with still, I think, 5 rounds to go. So there's much to play for, and I think already we can say that it's a great event with very little uninteresting games, and they fight really hard. So I'm looking forward to the new games played on Wednesday. Yeah, thanks for watching, and I'll be back soon. From home even, with better audio. So yeah, cheers and bye.